This is the Get Savvy Show, brought to you by the Reluctant Leader Academy. I'm your host, Mark Terrell, and on each episode, I'm going to help you get savvy to allow you and your business to grow. We'll be focusing on the three elements that lead to business success: your mindset, your processes, and your skills. Hello and welcome to the Get Savvy Show by the Reluctant Leader Academy. I'm Mark Terrell, and this is a special New Year's Day edition of the show where, as I put in the description, you can ask me anything. So if you fancy asking me a question, then please do. I have a guest lined up who's going to join me shortly, where we're going to just look at 2020, what it's taught us, and also about what's going to happen or what we plan for 2021. And also I'm going to share with you some books that I've been reading in the last year or so that have been really useful, and hopefully they'll be useful for you with what I've learnt. I'm just finishing off some bit of technical stuff which I forgot to do before I went live, so bear with me a second. I'm just connecting my AirPods, which allow me to make sure that what you hear is actually what you want to hear, rather than get some background noise from what's coming in to my speakers. So I think that's sorted out now. Right. So as I said, we're here just to reminisce and maybe just talk about some stuff. We've got no agenda here, and I might as well bring in my guest because I know he's waiting to join us. So welcome, Kieran. Are you there?
Yeah, I am. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can hear you well, and thanks for joining me. And like I said, there's no agenda, but I put not a request, but an invite to anybody that wants to join me today, just to talk about some stuff, and you took me up on that offer. So, Kieran, what brings you here today? What would you like to talk about particularly?
I think it's how I've had to change my role in the organisation with the onset of the COVID-19. And it's kind of forced me to do things that perhaps I should have done years ago. But what I've started doing is actually stepping back from the delivery and spending more time on the business development. And I'll be quite blunt about this. Marketing leaves me cold. It really does. I find it very difficult to get enthusiastic about it, or at least to keep that enthusiasm going for more than about 3 seconds. But I've got to do it. So I'm interested in other people's perceptions of when they've had to step into doing something, if you like, on their business that isn't part of their skill. You know, I am a reasonably experienced HR and management professional, so delivering that is what I enjoy. You know, I actually like managing staff. I know that's probably a bizarre thing, but for my business to succeed, I've got to develop different skills, and they're not necessarily skills I particularly like doing. So that's the challenge for me this year.
That's really interesting, because it's not only about the skills we've got, it's actually whether we want to do the things that we have to do, especially when we've got our own business. So let's just step back before we get into that, and just give us an overview of what your business does, Kieran.
Yeah, we provide full HR and management support to companies that don't want to employ a specific HR department, and we do everything from the administration of the holidays, timesheets, payroll, stuff like that, through to conducting hearings, consultations, business restructuring, mergers and acquisitions. So it's the full range of what you would expect an HR department to do.
Right. And so you've alluded to the fact that you've got to change what you do with regards to your business. Now, is that something that's been forced on you, or is it something that you've just realised that actually needs just to happen?
I kind of realised it needs to happen. That by having to do things online, by moving into this Zoom world and the video world, that I have to spend my time developing my business now and not just working on it. And there's also other factors in there which would have been there anyway. But the change and the move to lockdown has just accelerated that. And indeed, one of my clients, who's a very sort of upmarket marketing company, marketing out to China, has said he believes that the actual changes that have happened this year are merely an acceleration of what should have been happening anyway over the next 10 years. So it's not just this year that's caused it. It was coming anyway, but this year has speeded the process up.
Yeah, I think we avoid change even though we know it's the right thing to do, because we get into our comfort zone, and it's a bit like why fix something that's not broken and all those sort of things. But there comes a time, I suppose, the last year, 2020, has been a year of transformation. Somebody put on Facebook, what's the word you would say about 2020, and trying, there's lots of words you could use, but with regards to something positive, because there's always different perspectives on this. It's actually 2020 has been transformational individually for pretty much everybody on the planet has gone through this process of transformation of some sort, and then what that does is either we resent it or we actually realise that actually we have to embrace it, and embracing change is not something that a lot of people want to do. A lot of people just like to go along and have some expectations in their with their life and especially with their work. But when it comes to change, it's our attitude that has to change, isn't it? It's about realising that that has to change. And so how are you approaching this then, Kieran?
Well, I mean, I started off, and it's interesting you talked about the resenting change, because I've been through some fairly major resentments this year and enjoyed every minute of them, I have to say. There's nothing like a good resentment to keep you going. But initially it was quite enthusiastic. Oh, right, I can now start building the business. Then it turned into, oh, God, I don't know how to do this, which then turned into, oh, why can't I just do what I know what to do? And I suppose it's in the last couple of months that it's transformed itself to saying, well, actually, it's time you got your head out of the sand and actually did something. So we've started outsourcing some of the marketing to people who know about it. The danger, I think, and the trap I fell into is I thought I had to learn everything about it. So I was watching videos about Google Analytics. I was trying to learn how to edit videos. I was doing all of these things that the control freak part of me was saying, I have to know how to do this. I must do this. And actually, what I've started realizing is actually I don't need to know any of that. I merely need to know where we're going. And then trust the people that I actually employ, outsource to or whatever, to do it for me. So there's been a trust issue, and that's a relearning for me. In corporate life, you have to trust people with you because the organizations are simply too big for you to do it all yourself. And that's something I got used to. But working in your own business, it's much easier to fall into the trap of saying I must do everything and know everything myself, and I've had to unlearn that, if you like, and move into a more open mindset.
A great book I come across this. It's actually came out recently. Actually, is Who Not How, which is a great book about that. Exactly, finding the right people rather than learning to do it yourself. Find the right people that can allow that thing to happen to you. And I think marketing is the one thing that we try to do ourselves, that in most instances we don't want to do it, we're not motivated to do it. So when you're not motivated to do it, you do it badly, and then it doesn't give you the results, and then you get disillusioned. So one of the things that we should do is realize that there are experts out there that can help us. Talking about experts, we've been joined by Rebecca Jenkins. So she's made a couple of comments here. So we're just bringing, Rebecca said it's always good to review our business and question what we need to do differently. So 2020 has been good for that, as you say. Yeah, indeed. And then the other comment, embracing change is all part of growing and mindset. And I absolutely, Rebecca, I think we have to realise that things are going to change, and embracing it is something that we have to do.
Yeah, and I suppose the one thing, even though I'm getting to the point where my hair is all a suitable colour of grey, where change can start to seem scary because all of the long-held views that you've had now turn out to be probably in requiring a bit of rethinking. It is hard, particularly if you're comfortable in an area. But in truth, I mean, actually, I found since in the last sort of couple of months, as we know, because we've spoken before, haven't we, about this, Mark? I've actually found it much more energizing to embrace change, and it's very debilitating to fight it in terms of my energy levels and my ability to be active. And I think that's the key. If you actually embrace change and work towards it, you will be energized by it. And even though I'm the world's worst at enjoying marketing, I do get a buzz out when it works.
Yeah.
And that's
that's interesting what you just said there, really, because it's almost a little bit about a fear of it not working, fear of making a mistake and making a fool of yourself. And we put ourselves here. We're broadcasting live. I don't know if you realise. Well, you actually didn't know we're out there broadcasting live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And anything could go wrong. We could make fools of ourselves. But sometimes you say, well, actually, it doesn't matter. And what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And as long as we don't say something that's defamatory and upset someone in that sort of way, then really there's not much that could go wrong today. And hopefully somebody might connect with either one of us and think, actually, one of those people can help me overcome my challenges at the moment. And that's good in the world, isn't it?
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned, though, it was about books that you've had. I tell you a book which has actually helped me in the last couple of months, and it was recommended to me by somebody who's a client and actually works in the marketing sector, and she said you should read a book called They Ask, You Answer. I mean, it's an American book, and so you have to put up with these dreadful mangling of the English language that these Americans do. But no, it's fine. But actually, the instincts that book focuses on match very much a lot of the way I think about how do we talk about our business. And it's a really good antidote to the sort of approach that a lot of digital marketing has come to. I mean, the first thing, I'll just mention one thing that it really struck home with me is pricing. I have always been deeply frustrated by websites where you have to go through about 15 different iterations before you find out how much the damn thing costs. And my wife, who's also the FD, has decided on our website the pricing is on the first thing you see. As soon as you come in, bang, there it is. That's how much it costs. And that's based on her frustration at sites and doing it. And this book, They Ask, You Answer, actually bases itself on the fact not on what you want to tell people, but based on what they want to know. And of course, everybody, when they go onto a website to look for something, they want to know how much it's going to cost. It's top of the head. It's not even something they come to later on. This is the thing. So it's been a really important book for me, and it's helped crystallize a lot of the things I've done. So it's a book I would definitely recommend, even if you discard the ideas, because I mean, no idea is wasted. If you choose not to agree with it, that's absolutely fine, but at least you've considered it.
Absolutely right. And I think you're right in that, if you land somewhere and you want some idea of how much something costs, if there's no idea, then what's going to put you off more than anything about getting in contact with that company or that individual? You don't want to put yourself out there and ask the price question and then realise that it's well out of your ballpark. You want some idea of whether you can afford this service. Now, this is bizarre. And some people might say, "Oh, it's set up." But actually, I have that book on my desk. So that's the first. There's actually a new version out, which I think has come out this year. But the concepts are great in that we should be doing our best to help people up front, and that is more likely to bring people to you, and also being up front with information that people want to know. Mike's joined us. Welcome, Mike. Happy New Year to you too. And think about your customers and what do they want to know from you. They don't want a load of spiel about, oh, we've been going for 50 years. I went to school in London or whatever it is. They don't want to know. They have got no interest in that whatsoever. What they are interested in is how can you help them? Can you help them? And have you got a solution that will fit for the purpose? and also, can I afford it? Let's face it. There is a million different varieties and combination of cars we can buy, but ultimately we buy the car that we like, but also the one that we can afford. We can't all buy Rolls Royces, so absolutely, I like that. The book's great and highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just go back to that who not how thing. I think that's a really good way to. No, it's fine. It's great. It's who not how is finding people, which I've talked to another guest. It was Mark Williams actually. We talked about who not how because that was his biggest lesson, was finding someone that can help him with his business, and that was a marketing issue. So finding people that can help you because they have an expertise. Is the number one thing you should do as long as you can afford to pay them. That's the one thing, isn't it? Yeah. So we've got to get that right.
And also use the network. The power of networking is that you can find out recommendations of people by talking to people in the network and that. One of the most powerful recommendations I received from a client was not actually about the service we gave, but about the trust that they were prepared to have in us because it was recommended by somebody who was a close friend of the company owner. And I think that's a really powerful message is about trust. The whole point of networking, of course, where we met Mark is on the networking circuit. Yep. It's that kind of networking, despite it now being different because it's all online, it is important to have a kind of basic instinctive understanding. And just yesterday, I've been speaking to the owner of a group of care homes for children with autism, so who need residential care. And the reason he's talking to me is because one of my clients, who is a close friend of his, has recommended that we talk together, and it's that trust issue all the time. And that's when who not how really comes into its own, is when you've got that trust.
Yeah, again, that trust thing. I mean, I've done an episode of this with just about trust. Again, it is so important when we are going to work with people. We want to know that they're not going to necessarily leave us in the lurch, or actually firstly realise that they can solve the problem firstly, and then also that we have, I think it comes down to similar values. I think when you have similar values, then you can tend to work with people, even if your personalities are very different, as long as the values are in line. And it's realising that takes a bit of a time to suss out. It's almost like an invisible thing that sort of passes between two people. You get to know someone, then you sort of trust them. Yeah. You get to know the way they go about things. And then that's when the magic happens, because when you can really trust somebody, that's when you can really get, solve problems. And when it comes to teams, collaboration is really important, and no one individual can do everything on their own.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Historically, I mean, I set up my business 10 years ago, but I remember in the early 2000s, everything was about your USP. What's your USP? What makes you different from everybody else? And I always found that kind of difficult because there's only so many ways you can deliver what we do. But okay, that's what everybody was looking for. We were all looking for the USP. But what I found much more valuable, and this has come out more in the last 5 or 6 years, is actually don't bother looking for your USP. Find out what your values are. And if you can be clear about what your values are, then that's actually far more helpful to prospective clients than some USP, which might be meaningless. I could talk about the way that we approach dealing with a disciplinary hearing, and frankly, most employers are going to go, yeah, whatever. What they want to know is whether they relate to our values. And that's another thing that we've started doing this year, is actually with my team, talking about what values do we want to imbue within the way that we operate. And I think that for any business, that's key. And I hope that's what people are starting to do as well.
Yes, brilliant. And that links onto one of my books I was going to talk about during this broadcast, and that is The Values Factor, which is written by Dr. John D. Martini. And it is really essential to understand, firstly, your own what your values are. What do you actually live by? Because whether you know it or not, you do live by some sort of value. And when you're clear on them, you can then realise actually other people have, hopefully similar values to you. But what you have the biggest challenge with is people that have different values to you. and that's when communications and those other things that are important to work with people break down, because you are not seeing almost like a mirror of your values, and ultimately that leads into maybe conflict and all those sort of things that come from that. So values are absolutely really, really important.
Yeah, because I think in a comment I once heard, which I think really explains it well, if the values don't match, the client is wasting their money and the supplier is wasting their time. And to me, that's everything. Now, I appreciate ours is a service-based industry. People buy my time, if they like. They buy my brain power. Poor fools. So I'm not selling widgets. I'm not selling stuff that you can see. So in those cases, the values become the only real way to determine what are good clients. And we have actually walked away from clients where we said, look, we just think differently. You need somebody who is on your wavelength. And we've done that before. And I would suggest to anybody, you've got to have the courage to do that. It's not always easy to do that.
And absolutely, going back to what your values are, you can just, remind yourself of certain things that happened, and you think, well, what was the value that was going on there? So one that comes to mind for me is very early on with my coaching business, a client asked me to sort his team out. And I realized at that point that actually I wasn't going to do that. But one of my values is responsibility. He was basically passing responsibility for his team to me.
Yeah.
And I was not going to accept that. That was not my responsibility to go in and sort his team out. It was his responsibility to realise he has a part to play in this, and my role is to teach him what that is, and then help him with his team from there. And that was one thing that I picked up really early on. I'm not going to be working with somebody that's going to tell me to sort of sort his team out, because ultimately that's not going to work, is it? I'm sure you probably had similar things happen to you with what you do.
And I think I've told you the story before. We were brought in to deal with an organisation that they were saying was failing, and it was the weakness in the management team, and it was this, it was that, and all the other. And so I don't know why they actually brought us in, but they paid us an amount of money to do a review, and they seem to have already got the answer. During the course of the review, it became clear that the main stumbling block to the whole organisation was that two of the directors who had a main operational process, so they were actually involved in the day-to-day running of the business, were bullies. And there was no other way of putting it. That's the way they behaved. And they were also, they would be emotionally manipulative as well as being bullies. That was probably the hardest issue we had to deal with, because we had to find a way of going back and telling them that without, without causing offence, which is always virtually impossible. But again, we'd already done the work on our values, so we set back on our values and said, well, hang on, our values tell us that we must tell them that it is only right that they understand that. And even if it's not true, it is the perception of 85% of the staff. And if it is the perception, then that almost creates the truth. But I'm so thankful we'd done our values work before that, because it meant that there was really only one way we should go, and that was to be totally open with them, say, you have to deal with this issue. Two of you are considered to be bullies, and that's why people are not prepared to go the extra mile or be flexible.
Yeah, and two values there that come to mind are being honest and being brave. And ultimately, you've got to be those two things if you're going to be honest. I mean, I've seen honesty being one of the values of so many businesses, but actually, did they actually live up to it? That's the question. You've got to realise that it's all very well putting on the wall to say that, one of our values is honesty, but what does that actually mean? Does that mean we've got to be absolutely 100% honest with everything that we do? Because, that's not really realistic, is it? Let's face it. You don't want to be 100% honest every time that you're engaging with somebody by, almost like going like, well, I don't like your top or whatever it is. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. Honesty with regards to what is the important thing. Is, how does that show up as behaviour? That's the thing, isn't it?
And I have seen bullies use honesty as a weapon and as a way of undermining people. And that's not what we're talking about here. It's about honesty in terms of being transparent with people so that they're aware of the issues without judging them. I think, I've heard so many people who are in major relationship issues at work who have said, well, I'm just being honest. And I think, no, you're not. You're actually being rather unpleasant.
Yeah.
The other thing I would add to that as well, and this is my big learning, and I have to give credit where it's due. My wife is an absolute wonder at helping me realize that at the end of the day, there is more to life than just this. So there will be times when I'm fretting and jumping up and down, when she'll just put her arms around me and say, look, it's okay. We will survive. We will deal with this. And whether it's your wife, your partner, or a close friend, it's come more clear to me this year than it's been in before. And it was pretty clear before. You do need that kind of personal space in which to feel safe. And you've seen my motivational map. You know how important that is to me. Mm-hmm. And I think it is to everybody that they do need somebody somewhere who is close enough to them to say, do you know what? Sometimes you just have to walk away from it.
Mm. Yeah, not being too proud. Right, we have someone that's joined us. Colleen, thank you for your comment. Colleen says, adapting and connecting to each and every person whilst living your values and leading the way, purpose and communication is so important. Absolutely.
Yeah, quite right.
You've got to really connect with that. Thank you for that comment, Colleen. So yes, exactly what we've been talking about, and understanding your values and all that. So I'm conscious of the time, Kieran. We've been talking for almost half an hour now. I think time flies when you're having fun. So just to wrap things up,
ask me to speak, won't it?
No, it's always a pleasure. So just to wrap things up, where should we? What would you like to? Maybe let's think about 2021 then. We talked that you've got some change coming up. You have to sort of rejig things in your business. Anything else that you're thinking about for 2021 that's going to be sort of top of mind?
I think focusing on what we actually do well. And I think it's been too easy, I suppose, in the past to just do a scattergun approach and have clients all over the place, but actually building something that matches our values, that I feel committed to as an individual, and that is the care sector. I think the care sector has been treated appallingly in the last year, in the way that the COVID has been dealt with, and I think there's been some real bravery shown by the people working in that area. And so I personally feel I want to concentrate on that as an area, because it fulfills my ambitions as a business owner, but it also my personal need to feel I'm making a difference. So that's one of the big changes that I think we'll be doing. And in terms of the wider issues where I talked about having that space outside of business to make sure I retain perspective, because we can all I can certainly get very focused on what I'm doing. My ambition is to continue to build enough of a life outside of work so that I don't lose the perspective of people out there on the street, and I don't get too enhanced and entranced by my own ego, if you like. I need that to be kept down into size.
Yeah, I think it's having a balance of all sorts of things, and realising the things that you're drawn towards with regards to motivations that you're probably going to do without being told to. But sometimes the things that we are not motivated by are the things that we need those people to put their arms around us and make sure that we're doing the things that we don't naturally do. That's where they're really important, with not only with the connection, but actually that, just giving us a direction and having someone there that sees the world a bit different than us. Ultimately, we've all got our own, view of the world, and we make decisions and do things based on that. But we know that there's millions of different views on the world, and we need to have a wider, idea of the world. And one of the books I'm going to share shortly, Rebel Ideas, is about that, having a mixture of people that have different perspectives that actually allow you to solve problems in a way that you would never be able to do on your own.
Yeah, I agree.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kieran, for your contribution today. Really enjoyed it. Happy New Year to you. And,
yes, and you.
Hope to. Well, I'm sure I will see you next week, some point in the networking world.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Kieran.
Cheers. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Great stuff. Well, thank you, Kieran. I hope you enjoyed that. Kieran always brings lots of value to these shows, and just want to reach out to anybody that's listening that wants to join me. Then let me know if you'd like to come and join in with the Get Savvy show, be a guest. If you've got something that you have that you want people to be more savvy about, then please get in touch and we can sort that out. So as I've said in the during that chat with Kieran, and also in the preamble with this episode, I wanted to share a few books that I think, and I've read in the last 12 to 18 months, which I think are really, really good. Just to go back to this book, The Values Factor. Values are really important, and it's a book which is very practical. It actually helps you to find what your values are, firstly, and then once you found them, then you can think, well, where do they show up, and how does that come out as behaviours, and what does that link with people that I work well with and people maybe I don't, and realising those factors are always at play. There's the Values Factors by Dr. John Demartini. The Art of Possibility is a book written by Rosamund and Benjamin Zander. Now, if you haven't seen it, there is a brilliant YouTube video or TED Talk by Benjamin Zander. Highly recommend it. Check it out, because it's all about, well, pretty much all the things they talk about in this book. So I'm not going to spoil it for you. Just one thing I'm going to put, one of the 10, they talk about the 10 practices, the 10 practices, and one of them is rule number 6. And rule number 6 is, don't take yourself so something seriously. So when we talk about being too serious, we have to remember that, and Kieran mentioned this about, we have to make things sort of keep things in perspective and not allow things to get us down. And one of the rule number 6 is, don't take yourself so damn seriously. It is something that is worth checking into, and also the other 9 practices that they talk about in the book. The next book is I'm Okay, You're Okay. Very good idea to think about how you. It's a book about transactional analysis, actually, and it's a way that you go into to communicate with others. And if you go into communication with others, realizing that actually the best way to do that is to understand that you have to have an attitude of I'm okay and you're okay to get the best results. Where things don't work out very well is when you go into that communication or discussion around something that you want to resolve when you are not in that position. So if you're going into it with I'm okay, you're not okay, that's not going to get a great outcome. And if you go in the opposite, I'm not okay and you are okay, again, that's not going to be great. And I'm not okay and you're not okay, again, is not a great way to go into that. The book obviously goes into this in far more detail, but I'm okay, you're okay is the best place to be when it comes to communicating and getting the result that you want. Ultimately, we want a good result, then we need to have come from that position of I'm okay, you're okay. Next book is ZAP. Very simple concept. Be the zap, not the sap. So in other words, when you're with others, make sure that you are making a positive influence to them. Again, the book goes into this in great detail about how you can bring the zap and not be the sap. And that is very much, again, about communicating the way you show up. And really, it's a really enjoyable, it's written as a fable, a story, but actually there's a really, really important message in there for all of us. And finally, the book that I mentioned earlier, Rebel Ideas, realizing that we don't all have the answers to everything on our own. So we need to understand that people have different perspectives, realizing that those people have value and we have value too, and bringing those different views of the world together helps us to solve more problems. There's more to the book than just that, and Matthew Syed talks a lot about in his books around the idea that we're not like born to be brilliant at something. We can choose to be brilliant at something, and if we persevere, we can be good at anything. That's the point. So very much around mindset, around staying, how you are consistent. If you practice something, you are bound to be good at it, realizing that needs to happen for you to be good at something. So natural ability is very rare. Even the people like, say, Tiger Woods, he would not be as good as he is if he didn't carry on practicing. So his natural ability gets him so far, but ultimately he needs to carry on practicing. So Matthew Syed's books are brilliant. Black Box Thinking, Bounce are 2 other books he's written all around that sort of subject and way of looking at things. Right, well, I think that's enough for today. If you've joined in, thank you very much for your comments, and Happy New Year to you. I hope 2021 brings everything that you want it to. I hope it is the year where we sort of recover from 2020. And also, I think remembering that we've learned some lessons in 2020. Yes, it's not the 2020 that we went into expecting, but hey, it's happened. We need to learn from it and make the most from it. So thanks for joining us, Mike. Thank you. So let's bring that in, Mike. So thanks for that. Mike's suggesting a book. I think Try the Stories We Tell Ourselves. Scott. Great. Another example of a book which will help us make better decisions. Happy New Year to you, Colleen. Thank you for joining. And yes, so I'll wrap these things up. Thank you for those who joined in, those of you have contributed to today, and hope to see you soon, very soon, on the next episode of the Get Savvy Show.